1-bit, 2-bit, 4-bit, 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, 64-bit, 128-bit.
I think you went a little bit too far. Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Activated. I am PatNet, and I'm joined by Weirdo Maxim. You had to pull the stops at 64-bit.
Fine, 64, gosh. I was gonna get more coins, but no, 64, gosh.
No. We want to stop at 64 because the one and only Macbat runs at 64-bit. At least it's supposed to look like it is. But that's what we're talking about today, Macbat 64.
Oh boy, we're talking about a bat who's a Mac who's 64.
Yeah, how can you be both a Macbat and a 64 at the same time? That seems a little ridiculous if you ask me. Yeah, Macbat 64, it's definitely a nostalgia game that's supposed to emulate the times of the N64 where you had a bunch of 3D platformer collectathons coming out, primarily made by Rare, of course, and it definitely respects that genre in every sense of the word. It wants to recapture that feeling, and I think for a lot of it definitely does. And that's definitely the strongest suit of the game is kind of going way back in time for me. I think, Donkey Kong 64 was one of the first games that I played, as well as Mario 64, but I was a very young lad at the time. And I'm a huge fan of that genre, so jumping through that nostalgia lane was very nice for me. Would you say that you hold a lot of value to that genre of games in that time period?
It's kind of hard to tell, to be honest, because for me it was like, there was games like Mario 64 and everything, but if I had to say my childhood, I think my childhood started on Tetris, truthfully speaking. So I played a lot of Tetris on Facebook. I did play Mario 64 and everything, but my main go-to was the PS2 era games, so Kingdom Hearts, Crazy Taxi, all that jazz. I'm not as deep into the 64 as you are, but I have my fair share of games.
Gotcha. I'm not going into game design. That's not necessarily my field. But of course, like any other epic gamer out there with a capital G, I've always had this idea of like, man, it'd be really cool to make a video game. And I think the game that I've been wanting, if I were to make a game, the game I would want to make for the longest time has been a 3D platformer collectathon. And it's not necessarily just because I'm super nostalgic for the genre, but also I think the genre has all the puzzle pieces there for like a perfect game in a way. It's just waiting for someone to grab all those pieces and put them together, because I think different games have elements of everything you need. So anytime there's a new kind of game, even if it's a small indie project like this, which this is definitely a small project, I'm always eager to try it, because I like to see what fresh blood does to the genre and the different directions they can take it. Now, I think we could both agree that Macbat doesn't necessarily push the envelope in any of its areas. It kind of stays in a safe territory, which is okay. There were some times where I was kind of hoping for not even a push necessarily in weight of world design or weight of characters or anything like that. Like the actual content that's there, I wasn't left saying, hey, I really need more content. It was more just, I need a little bit more complexity within the content. Some of the puzzles were clever, but maybe not pushed far enough, I think. But I don't know if you felt that way too.
See, at one point I do agree with you. I think the problem here is that you're thinking of the game needs to be more difficult, whereas the game is a very, very easy, like very for children and everything like that. I mean, the whole story is about you defeating a watermelon. So it's not taking anything too serious. It's like, oh, by the way, thanks for helping me. Here's the key to the dungeon you need. And it was like, it's ridiculously easy game, and it's definitely targeting to very young children to, just have a quick fun game. I think having complex puzzles would have destroyed the target demographic of the game, but I can also see where you're coming from as well.
Well, I guess I would pose the question, I mean, for one, it's absolutely okay to have an easy game made for kids, I think. I don't think the root of my problem is necessarily the difficulty. But I think a question I would ask is it really targeted towards a younger demographic? Because I think the kind of people who'd want to play it are those who lived through those 90s when they had games like that coming out, because it really is a tribute piece to that time. But it could be made so that if a kid were to figure out itch.io and which this game is on, you know, and purchase this random store game, then they could play it with no ease, and they still could find enjoyment out of the cleverness in just even world design, because there's definitely a lot of interesting world design mechanics there. I think what I meant in terms of complexity was just not necessarily making something harder, but just making it more intuitive, I guess. Some of the puzzles feel like you could enter it without any experience prior in the game and still pass them with ease, instead of puzzles building on themselves and learning from the puzzles to complete the puzzles in the future or something, right? Which is a very simple, you know, it's a very common thing in game design to have puzzles that build on themselves in a way. But I don't think you have to be difficult in order to accomplish that in a weird way, right? That said, I wasn't not enjoying my time with the puzzles. There's still definitely some clever ideas that were thrown into there. One of the ones I liked was there was this haunted mansion level where you're trying to find, you know, you're opening up the doors in a certain order, but then also there's some cleverness with like some of the paintings you're being able to walk through. And probably gameplay wise, what shines most about the game is how each level feels like it's very much its own thing. And one thing I always applaud 3D platformers for doing when they do it is having platforms that are integrated so well with the world design. And that's definitely the case with this game. Like, the platforms aren't just floating objects, they're always attached to the world somehow, whether they're trees or they're cars or they're Kirby style blocks, which was pretty funny. There was definitely a Kirby tribute level which came out of nowhere. I was like, oh shoot, we're side scroller now. But it's kind of cool that they're like, yeah, we can do that. Let's just go for that, you know.
It's a very very simple, but it's a very fun game. It's a very short game as well. We both actually beat the game. For me, it took like 40 minutes just to beat the game.
My playtime was more like an hour, but yeah, I did beat it, and I think close to 100% it. But yeah, no, it's injustice to the genre, which is really nice. It definitely valued what made that genre special and managed to incorporate it at every turn. Did you notice the guest appearance though in the game?
The Kiwi?
Well, they also had guest appearance. I guess they got a whole multiverse going on. I didn't know any of that, but I was like, okay, they really like this Kiwi guy. But no, they actually got a voice clip, a couple of voice lines from Grant Kirkhope, who was the composer of a lot of Rare N64 games.
Really?
Yes, yeah. He's got a little bit of a cult following online now. Like, a lot of people really like him. But he voiced a little chimp that was sitting on a chair at the top of the mountain.
So that's why that chimp had the voice.
Yeah, I was like, that's definitely Grant Kirkhope. That's gotta be. So it's pretty cool. I guess I don't know how that deal went down, but that was pretty cool of him to lend his voice to such a small project.
I just wanted to say, I just checked the websites and everything. It's apparently the Macbat 64 is apparently on Steam, Android, itch.io, and Nintendo Switch.
Macbat 64 is on Nintendo Switch?
It is indeed in Nintendo Switch.
I was not expecting that. Yeah, wow. I mean, that's the proper console for it to be on these days. And Steam too. They got it greenlit on everything. You know, it's definitely something that's not going to, you know, make you think about it every time you play a new 3D platform or anything like that. It's not something that's necessarily going to stick with you for the rest of your life. It's mostly a project that's worth appreciating purely based on how much they enjoyed that time and how much they enjoyed that genre and how they wanted to recreate that the best way that they could in whatever limited resources they had. And yeah, it was just, you know, it's a simple short game, but with a surprising amount of cleverness integrated into the design and the world. And even a lot of the characters are very interesting. It holds a little bit of that wit that we're used to seeing as well within the Rare games. And yeah, I think it's definitely worth a try if you have those nostalgia classics like I do, and you just want to you know, see what else is in that genre these days. And that's the indie department, or the indie industry is where the new blood is, where people get to relive those things from their childhood, because sometimes modern games don't try to relive the childhood, and that's up to the indie developers. Like, there's no other 3D platformer collectathons by AAA studios that try to recreate that magic, right? It's like, if you want to find stuff like that, you pretty much have to go to the world of indie games.
And as for me, as someone was not into a 64 era, this game is definitely worth if you're playing with, your kids or your sons or daughters or anything, and they want to be introduced to games. This is by not far, it's not the best game to play, but it's honestly one of the really amazing games to play, and where you can sit down with your kids and just have fun, and even give them the controls, because there's not
much to control.
yeah, pretty much. There's not much to control. It's so simple that even a 5-year-old can sit down and play, which is a very good introduction to a video game world. So I recommend it. Or even people who haven't played video games to begin with.
Yeah, and it's definitely not a huge money investment. I didn't see the exact cost of it, but I imagine it's like 99 cents or something. It's got to be pretty dang cheap.
$2.
$2. There you go. I mean, for $2, you get an hour of entertainment, and then possibly more entertainment for any younger ones around you. So definitely worth a pickup. Short little playthrough, and then you move on with the rest of your cup of coffee when it's over. So I guess that's my final thoughts. It's a good love letter. If you are looking to experience more of an actual game with more substance, not to say this isn't a game, but a deeper game, a bigger experience that's like going back to the Rare days, there are some other indie games that do that, namely A Hat in Time. That's kind of the most popular one, right? That's a great way to experience the genre also. But what's kind of cool about Macbat 64 is that it runs as if it was on the N64, which is something that's, to my knowledge, really difficult to emulate nowadays, to make newer programs function to look like it was on older hardware. So it's even that feat alone is something that's pretty admirable, and you can get that experience by trying out Macbat 64.
Macbat 64 is $2 and available on Steam, itch.io, Android, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Nintendo Switch.
That's wild to me. Man, I didn't even know that. Aren't they worried that they're having competition? Aren't they worried that Macbat 64 will single-handedly destroy Mario and all those other 3D platformers they make? I guess they don't make any others but Mario. Probably not going to destroy Mario. Nintendo, if indie games can do it, why can't you? Why can't you just make some more 3D platform collectathons? They were fun. They were great.
I mean, they kind of did with Tears of the Kingdom, but we don't talk about the collectibles there.
That's true. I mean, that's a different kind of... That's a whole nother beast, though. I guess what I'm saying is, Nintendo, hire me. I'll make it, be that simple. I'll write up some code. I'm definitely a good programmer, so, don't shake your head, Maxim. I'm a good programmer, okay? I made a website before. Anyways, I think that's gonna do it, right? I think we said all we want to say. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Backlog Activated. And of course, you can subscribe to see more episodes, including one coming out next week on a brand new game. It might not be new. It's probably not new. It's probably old, but we'll talk about it for sure. I have been PatNet, and this has been Maxim. Thank you for joining me. And of course, I'll see y'all in the next one. Take care, and so long.
Subscribe, otherwise I'll steal your coins.